Everybody. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Kate Caravella, one of the co-founders and executive coach at Breaking Forward Coaching. In one of the corners here is Casey Ducote, who is one of our, she is our executive assistant and client support specialist. And really exciting news is Felix Bechtolsheimer in London is joining us today.
Oh, yeah.
And Felix, you and I have known each other for a very long time, and you've done a lot of different things professionally. And I feel like it would just be easier if you just filled us in and told us, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, well, I've been a musician most of my life. And I run a record company at the moment, which I love doing. I occasionally veer off to other things. I've made films, music documentaries, and I've worked on all sorts of stuff. I'm quite keen on doing up properties as well, which is a total when the creative industry gets a bit much, I like doing that kind of stuff as well. So
What was that? I'm sorry.
doing up properties, doing up houses.
Oh, okay. Did not know that. Okay, that's new. That's new.
Only occasionally, but it's something I love doing as well.
Wonderful. And of all the so tell us more about your career as a musician, because
Yeah.
like you're not just like the guy that just plays guitar every now and again in their kitchen for like their kids, right? I mean, you tour.
Yeah, I tour a lot. We've released a lot of records. And until the last record, actually, I tended to sort of manage the band, be the agent for the band, do a lot of the promotion. I'd have a team that I'd work with, but I would be the guy doing the managerial role, which is quite a tricky thing to do. There was, I think, the last campaign we did before the label got bigger. I think we had 15 or 20 people in the team who were all reporting back to me, and that would be happening even while we were on tour. I'd be in the back of the tour bus with the laptop and the headphones on, doing
So
arranging the
a
next
lot of
music
things
videos
to
and stuff.
attend to.
Yeah,
Yeah. Did you find that challenging? Was that something that kind
very.
of came naturally for you, or is that something that you really had to kind of work at?
I think unfortunately, it came naturally to me. It probably would have been better if I'd given up some of that and let someone else do it. Um, but I'm a bit of a control freak. And especially if it's something I'm passionate about, I need to be involved and informed about everything that's going on. When sometimes it might have been better to just let go a little bit and let some other people do it. I've got better at that now. And the last record we put out, which is, I'd say, probably by quite a long way the most successful record, we had a really good team who took on a lot of that stuff. And I just was allowed to be the artist for a bit, which is quite nice.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
in both of those pieces, right? I mean, the managerial agent piece and and being the lead, right? The doing your
Yeah.
music, right? Those are the
Yeah.
two very different parts of like the brain, really,
Mm,
right? There's like left brain, right brain stuff, which I
yeah.
won't bore you with, but not a lot of people have a really difficult time transitioning from one part to the other.
I do
Yeah.
as well. And I find the organizational stuff comes much more easily to me. I really have to get in the zone to do the creative stuff. And that can be quite tiring and emotionally quite taxing as well. So it's something to run away to. So, well, let's just book another interview. Let's book another this or that, rather than sitting down and finishing the bloody song, which is it's the harder thing to do, I think.
I could see now that's not something that I would have even thought of. So
I
tell
think
us
most of
about.
my musician friends find it the other way around. They find it easy to sit down and churn out song after song. For me, I get very emotionally involved in all the music. So it's tiring, and I'm a perfectionist. I want to get the lyrics right, and it doesn't matter how long it takes me to do it. So it's always easier to just get distracted by, you know, posting something online or doing an interview or doing some emails.
Sounds a little bit like ADHD,
Yeah, well, that I've
which we
been
were
told I got a
which we were
diagnosis
actually talking
actually.
about before, but yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was about 6 months ago or so. I think I got diagnosed with that. Someone said it to me. They said you've definitely got ADHD, I'm not going to repeat what I said to them for your polite audience, but I said absolutely no way. I don't know what you're talking about. And then obviously I went and thought about it, and then I started reading about it. I was going, oh my God, this might be a thing. I saw my doctor and he started laughing. I was going, yeah, you're probably right. So yeah, I got a diagnosis, and yeah, lo and behold, here I am.
Tell us about your last album, because I know that was I mean, because I saw a lot of, like different videos and different things that you were
Yeah.
doing relative to it. So,
It was a
you know,
very it was a very challenging time. I'd written the majority of the album was written, and the band we'd been touring a lot, and previously the albums, it was very much me and the producer who did the majority of the creative stuff, and then the band would come in and play on the record very much under the direction of Ollie Baste, my producer. And after a lot of touring all over the world, they were saying, look, we've earned our right now to go in together and make this record as a band, which I found quite challenging. And we started doing preparation work for it. And that was in March 2020. And we'd done a little bit in Nashville the year before, and that I wasn't really happy with what that sounded like. And we were in the room doing it, and I was sort of going, oh, I'm not sure how this is going. And my wife came in and goes, I've got a fever and a persistent cough. And that was before you could get a COVID test, but it was all over the news, COVID was happening. So everyone out, and we went down to my mum's place in the countryside, and there was no one down there. And I went down there with my wife and the kids, and we were there for the next 3.5 months. And the record was cancelled. We were meant to the band was meant to go into a studio together, residential work together. That was cancelled. And so I was down there and I just kept writing. And I think it was 2 weeks later, my father passed away, which had a big impact on me on a personal level, but also on a creative level. That was the only thing I had, was to try and write more. I kept writing more and more songs. And then we were one of the weird bands who made a COVID record, where we had a bubble. It was me, the engineer, and the producer, and then the band members were allowed in one at a time to do their parts, which was very difficult for them. They didn't like that. And it didn't take that much longer before the band left. And it was just me by the end of it. So we'd made the record. I then went away. We couldn't do anything with it because COVID, you couldn't tour. No one was buying music really in physical form. So there's no way of making money. So we put it on the shelf, and I just kept writing. And then a little while later, I went back in the studio without the band and recorded another 5 or 6 songs. And that sort of became the second. We ditched half of the album and so it became an album of 2 halves, which was interesting. So there was it was very emotional. You had COVID. Now it's easy to look back and go, oh, that was weird. We couldn't go to the pub, and we couldn't do this, and we couldn't hug. What people forget is, at the time, we didn't know if any of that would come back.
Exactly.
We didn't know that. We did not know. I remember talking to my booking agent going, oh, is this the end? Are our children going to say we've never been to a concert before? We've never been to a festival. And we didn't know at the time, and so that was a time of extreme anxiety for everyone. In my family, it was incredibly painful, the loss of my father. I then had to deal with the loss of my band, and it was not a very pleasant experience. I'm still very good friends with one of them, 2 of them, one of whom I was very, very close to as an usher at my wedding, hasn't spoken to me for over a year and will not talk to me. And they've never given me the opportunity to even sit down and talk about it. So it was emotionally an incredibly intense record to make. But musically, it was my favorite record I've made. And
And the name of it again?
People in Cars. And it was really beautiful for me as well, to the reaction that we got. And it got really a positive reaction. I've never had so much radio play before. And, we ended up getting a lot of play in the States on NPR, and we did a Tiny Desk concert, and a lot of stuff I've never had the chance to do before. So it was nice in the end, but it was, in that time, it was a weird pressure cooker, and it took me a little while to get over that, to be honest.
It sounds very intense, for sure.
Yeah. But it was a positive experience in the end. And as this all was going on, I had this other project that was sort of coming out of necessity. In October or November, before the pandemic hit, a very, very close friend of mine now, a guy he was just a musician I was a huge fan of, and a guy called John Murray. And he wanted to make a record with a very big name producer, and no one would work with him because he's crazy. He's autistic, an ex-heroin addict. He's the adopted child of the Faulkner family. You know, William Faulkner's the next generation of that, from Mississippi. He was in exile in Ireland, and no one would work with him. So I decided to expand the record label and sign this guy. So, and I was
Of
already
course you
too
did.
busy. So I did that, and then 2 weeks later, I was going, what have I done? No one else can work with this guy. And 2 weeks later, I was in a room with a band called the Alabama Three, who are from London. They did the theme song for The Sopranos,
Ah,
and they're a big cult band over here. And they've been friends of mine for a long time. And they were saying, well, we want to make a record, and our distribution isn't right. Can you help us? So I said, I'll do it. So at the same time as all this crazy stuff was happening, I set up a new record company and started signing artists that I really, really loved and that were too crazy for anyone else to want to work with them. And so
this does not
it's a
surprise
bit
me at
like
all.
your other business, you know. So I had that going on at the same time. So in the pandemic, I had Alabama 3 was supposed to go into the studio. The studio would call and say, no, we're closed. So we booked the next studio. They were closing. So we couldn't get them in. So we were making my COVID record at the same time as trying to facilitate their COVID record. And these people are, you know, they're wild. They're not like you and me. You know, they're a lot older, but they take a lot of hand holding. And so at the same time as sort of adjusting to my own musical career, I was building this new crazy family. And it's turned out really well. So I'm very
That was going to be
happy.
my next question. So how did that turn out?
It was chaos, but with Alabama 3, they hadn't made a good record I said that to them, in 13 years. I said, look, you do nothing. You play on the old hits, and we had an argument, and they said, why do you want to work with us? And I said, because I know you can do better. And we put them in with a great producer. We worked really hard on it. And Larry, the singer, really worked hard on just writing the best songs he's done in a long time. And it was a really successful record. And we've just done the next one, which is coming out in October now. And John Murray did brilliantly. He won awards with it. They've just done a documentary about him, which is doing really well. And the label is growing rapidly now. We're just signing stuff left, right, and center. So
Wow.
it's been a really interesting metamorphosis over the last few years.
And isn't it interesting how how things happen,
Yeah.
right? Where, and we could either shut it down and walk away
Mm.
from it, or we could look at it as a challenge, right? And go, well, like in that particular example, like
Yeah.
nobody else wants to work with them. All right, let's see what I can do. And being
It was
able to
painful at
make
times.
something
It
really
was
cool
very
from it.
painful. You know, I had to go. There was a couple of times when I had to sit down with the singer and go, listen, you have to. I've backed you. You have to now finish you have to back the producer and stop harassing him and stop calling him at 4 a.m. and just finish the bloody record. And they did. And, you know, and we're very close friends, you know, now. And we do these parties for the record company. We had one last week. And it's the most incredible feeling to be down there in this horrible music club. It smells and the sound is terrible, but you have like 200 people packed in, and all these young bands who don't know each other are making friends, and then they're collaborating, and everyone's hanging out together, and it's like a little mad family. And it was the manager for Alabama 3 was down there, and he goes, well, John Murray just had a problem, so he turned up at my doorstep at midnight and I let him in. And someone else had just been talking to that guy, and they're all now literally collaborating, but also helping each other out and just partying together and having fun together. So that's a huge achievement for me. That's something really special.
That I would imagine that feels really good and
Yeah,
very
it's really
worthwhile.
cool. It's really,
Would
really
you
cool.
say that type of thing is something that kind of serves you as the motivation, from a motivation standpoint, for other endeavors that you might
Maybe
engage?
it's interesting to go from wanting to be a musician, especially a singer. It's very much about you, you know, you want to be in the limelight. You want everyone looking this way.
Sure.
And I'm now really enjoying not doing that and looking at them and looking at their, you know, we went to see I can't remember which band it was recently, and Gigi, my wife, said to me, is there a part of you that wishes it was you on stage? And I said, no, there's a part of me that wishes it was Alabama 3 or She Drew the Gun or John Murray or She's in Parties or one of my other bands, because I was a bit bored at that gig. And I said, they're a lot better than that. And I'd rather watch one of my bands now than me be the guy on stage. And that's quite a nice takes the pressure off a bit.
So speaking, yes, and that was really going to be my next question too, right? Is, you have a lot of things going on, right? And
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that you do, and you're very, very close with your family. You have a lot of friends. You have a lot of associates. You've got an amazing wife, Gigi. You've got two amazing children. So how do you self-care in all this? How do you maintain your balance?
Self-care is difficult because, like, talking about going back to the ADHD thing, or ADD as you call it, um, the I can get by without. I tried the medication for one day and I did not enjoy that. Um, and I can do pretty well if I have the time to self-care and do the things that I need. I need to go to the gym 3 times a week. I need that. I know you'll probably laugh now, because I remember when you used to force me to
I,
go,
so,
dragging my pack of cigarettes from station to station. But
with your purse,
yeah, exactly.
you had a little
Um,
purse.
yeah,
Um, that was actually going to be one of my questions because I promised Bob over here that I would, give him a shout out. Like who,
yeah,
joking, of course, but like who would you credit to your awesome physical fitness?
definitely, Bob. He was he was so patient with me doing all that stuff. But those are the kind of self-care I need. That I have to eat pretty well. That's really important for me. And I need to sleep well. I had sleep deprivation for decades, and it was probably, I think it was a few months before, it was just after my dad got diagnosed, that I just went, right, it's half, I think I was uh, 43 or 44 at the time, something like that. And I just went, it's half time. It's time to get all of this stuff sorted. So I went to see a nutritionist. I went to see a sleep clinic, and I got diagnosed with sleep apnea, which has been the biggest godsend of my life, because it looks like a mouth guard you wear for hockey, and I can sleep now. But those are the things I need. Now, the problem is I'm not always very good at enforcing that I can get all those things. And that is the problem. I know what I need, but it's actually doing it. And I was doing very well with the gym. At the moment, I'm commuting out of town to do up this property, which is an hour each way, and it loses a lot of time. And then with my son, he loves doing Lego. So that's why all my interviews today, everything I'm doing is finishes at 5 my time, because then I've promised him an hour of Lego together. But a lot of the time, it's then my self-care stuff then comes last, and that's the bit that's hard to consistently do. So I try, but I don't always succeed at it.
Well, you know what? I think it's really one of those things where we look at it in progress, not
Mm.
perfection, right?
Yeah.
And I think that most people, in fact, I work with a lot of people who they know what they want, they know what they need, and just making it happen is just not as easy as they'd like, right? And so it's
It's
like, and
especially
I think
hard with
that's,
young children, because by definition, their needs have to come first. And that, so it's then you then have to look at what time have you actually got left, and then sacrifice something else from that, rather than sacrificing what they need. And
well,
that's
that's
a
the thing. If you're going to
complicated
add
thing to learn.
something, well,
Yeah.
that's the part of it too, right? Like if you're going to add certain things to your life and your time and your schedule, there has to be some giving points
Yeah.
on other pieces, right? And it's really hard for people, a lot of people, to really kind of focus on those things, and
Mm.
that's one of the things that we do with coaching too,
Mm.
right? And we talked a little bit prior to our interview about what coaching is, and how, unlike say therapy and counseling, coaching, there's like a start point, there's a middle point, there's an end point. It's very focused, it's very goal specific, it's very action based, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to like process type stuff. Now, I know that you have never shied away, right? I mean, you
Mm.
even just talked about it, going to the doctor, going to the sleep clinic, going to the nutritionist. You've never shied away, right, from asking for assistance, support, help,
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
Throughout, for as long as I've known you, right, and it just even currently, you've mentioned it. So from why do you think that is for you? I mean, why does it seem to be a little bit easier for you to say like, hey, like I don't know what I don't know and I'd like to know, and
I think
move.
when you've been when you've been in the gutter, I don't get ashamed about asking for stuff because, I was, you were one of the people who dragged me out of the gutter when there was nothing left. So to now go and say I've got problems sleeping, that's a very small thing to admit to,
Good point.
I've got problems with
There's a
this, or,
point there, yeah.
I'd like to eat. The reason I saw a nutritionist was I was eating reasonably healthy, but it's impossible when you're on tour. And when you're driving hours, 7, 8 hours a day, and you get a 10-minute break at a gas station, well, how are you going to do that? So I went to see her for that, but it then spilled over into the rest of my life. It's like, how do we, and I learned a lot. And I said, oh, wow. So that's the way you do this. And some of it I do well, and some of it not so much, but it's, yeah, for me, I just don't have any shame about that stuff. I think we're all messed up in some way. And anyone who thinks they're too good
We
to
all have
ask for
stuff.
help, it's like, good luck to you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Those are the ones that tend to be a little bit like, yeah, I'm a little scared of you, by the way.
I think
Casey, do you have any questions? I'm sorry.
Barbara said years ago, she said, there's no one who has no shit. Everyone, you're either working on your shit or you're not working on your shit. And so I try and, I just try and sort of get a little bit better. And I have a huge sense of responsibility, because I think the way our negative behaviors and addictive behaviors and ways we avoid things, and that all rubs off on our children, and they will end up inheriting baggage. No matter how well we do, they'll inherit all sorts of suitcases from me, but the more we can, I think the more we can deal with and overcome, and the more we can lead by example, hopefully the less they'll have to deal with later on. I don't know if that's right, but that's just how it feels to me.
I can't imagine that it wouldn't be right, to be honest with you, right? I mean, so much of who we become, how we perceive the world, how we develop habits, how we, just how we function is often just a result of what we see and what we experience, right, as children. It's every part of our lives, and yeah, the older we get, the more stuff we have, right? Hopefully we become a little bit more adept at recognizing that we're getting more stuff and that maybe we need to. Casey, did you have any questions before we close out? Did you have any questions for Felix? I know that you were super interested in his history and just kind of what he does.
Just one really quick one. Like you've done all these things that would be, I think, very intimidating to a lot of people. Like you became a successful musician. I think you've written a book, like you've made film. Like, do you ever get scared or anxious or intimidated? And if you do, like, how do you overcome that and try new things and put yourself out there?
I think I get intimidated, but usually the excitement about doing it, rather than I don't sit there and go, if I write this album, I'll get to do this, or it'll take me to this level. I just get really excited about a song, and then next thing there's another song. I also get very anxious. I didn't get anxious with the last record. I documented the making of the last record. I was writing a diary every day, and it was the anxiety around it, but it was not people won't like it. There was none of that. It was furthest from my mind. It was just, what if I can't finish it? What if the words don't come for that song? What if the chorus doesn't work? That doesn't work, and I'll never finish it. And it's that. And I then and Gigi, my wife, said, but you've done this with every record. You always have a panic, and then suddenly it's done, and off you go on tour, And I think it's more the anxiety is, will it be good enough, rather than will people like it? And so I think that's probably where most of my anxiety comes with it. I did write a book. I spent a long time working on it. I think I went through 17 drafts of it. And in the end, just as I was starting to talk to agents and publishers and stuff, I just had to be completely honest. It's one of the hardest things I've had to do. It just wasn't good enough. It just wasn't good enough. And I shelved it, and I went off and made a record, and started a new band and moved on, and I'm not bitter about that. It's just sometimes you can't have it's not a Disney movie. You can't just have this dream. Now I'm going to write a great novel, and then it was a piece of shit. And, maybe I'll come back to it one day. Maybe I won't. And I've made some records that aren't great, and I've made some records I'm incredibly proud of. And I think you just have to get back in the ring and have another go. I think when you've been really down in life, and you've, you know, as well, for me, I've lost so many people I'm very close to. It's just to be able to go out there and have another go, as long as you can have a, you know, have a few laughs with your friends and with your family at the end of the day. That's quite a blessing in itself, you know, just to be able to. I've got a lot of very, very talented friends who are not here anymore. They don't get to make another record, you know, so to give it a go, you know, what's the worst that can happen?
Very cool.
Thank you so much for spending our time today. It was lovely to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us, really. If like you're, you know, I mean, again, we've known each other for quite a long time, and
23 and a bit years now.
Wow, I feel so old now.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving that very
Sorry.
specific.
Me too.
I can deal with it. No, but you know, and to see how you've evolved professionally and all the different things that you've done. And I know that there's been times when it was more difficult than others, you know, and it was just, you've always been able, you know, you've always had that sort of like that inner resilience that I think you began. It sounds like you understand that you have, and I'm not sure that when I first met you that you did understand that about you.
Yeah. I think I didn't understand much about me at the time.
You were also like a child, like for real.
Yeah.
Thank you. Enjoy
Thank
Lego
you so
time.
much.
Enjoy Lego time. Let me know how that goes.
Great to see you and lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
And we'll speak very soon.